Happy end of May. It's been an interesting month, and in truth, not a particularly bad one, especially when compared to the last several that I've had. Such is the nature of life, right? It ebbs and flows like the tides of a mighty ocean, driven eternally by forces far beyond our control. Poetry aside, I think that's the point that I want to touch on this month. There's so much unpredictability in this world right now, both on the larger community scale and on the smaller individual level. As an engineer, I often feel like it's my responsibility to decipher all of the possible outcomes of everything that I say or do before I say or do it. In math terms, I have a compulsion to find the partial derivative of everything with respect to everything else. Or in simpler terms, I overthink everything. For a moment, I want to speak primarily to the other fellow overthinkers watching this video. When you're in the throes of overthinking something, what do the non-overthinkers in your life usually tell you? If your experience is anything like mine, you've probably heard the phrase, just don't overthink it so much. And if you have heard that phrase, you've probably not only heard it so many times, but also rolled your eyes at it so many times that if you only had a penny for each time, you could retire tomorrow. But I wonder, would those same people tell a paraplegic, well, just start walking? Of course not. It'd be crazy to expect somebody who is physically and objectively incapable of doing something to just somehow overcome that inability by sheer force of will. But the key word in what I just said is objective. When it comes to mental stuff, it's a bit more complicated than physical stuff. There's no longer an objective metric against which something can be measured. So oftentimes, those afflicted by a given condition are misinterpreted as lazy, unmotivated, or apathetic by those that don't have it. That being said, and hopefully this doesn't come across as hypocritical, I do believe there are indeed people who hide behind those so-called disorders as excuses for their actions. But it's unfortunately not so black and white that we can easily determine who's sincere and who's milking it. And that's just proof that we all live a different experience in life. However, this uncertainty breeds chaos. We have become a society that is so deathly afraid of offending anybody that we decide instead to pardon all types of fringe behavior as some sort of obscure mental illness that must be protected at all costs. We prioritize accommodation over accountability by hiding the facts behind an ever-expanding list of acronyms defended by deliberately confusing and inflammatory rhetoric designed specifically to pit us against each other. I'm going to let that one sink in for a second. In doing this, our society has created smaller and smaller boxes for all of us to fit into just to avoid the fear of not belonging or conforming to something. It used to be that personality traits are just different in different people. What a concept. But now suddenly everyone has a disorder or a divergence or something else that makes them defined by these personality traits. But now all of us have a litany of pseudo-diagnoses to help us feel less isolated in this world. And that's where those acronyms come in. So instead of saying things like, I like stuff to be done in a certain particular way, or I like to multitask, now it's, I have OCD and I have ADHD. I sadly fall victim to that all too often, as these short labels are generally easily accessible ways to distill down my own personality to a few sound bites. But this is actually quite dangerous if you really think about it, because in our pursuit of labels, we have inadvertently let our unique experience of life define us instead of informing it. And that's a critical distinction, but it's one that we rarely have the clarity to observe when we're actually in the midst of it. But why am I saying all of this? And how does it tie back to the unpredictability of the world that I mentioned at the beginning of this video? Well, it all centers around adaptability. When something happens to us, good or bad, big or small, it shapes who we are and it shapes how we interact with future stimuli. Put another way, we learn from our experiences, whether they are successes, failures, achievements, tragedies, wins, losses, you get the idea. We are molded by every experience that we have. In the case of extreme situations, especially negative ones, our focus is often drawn exclusively to the lack of control that we had in those moments. the way that life acted upon us from far beyond our capability to influence, not unlike the moon and its gravity acting upon the oceans of Earth to create the tides. But for those of us that overthink everything, this feeling of powerlessness is intensified tenfold. We can quickly become consumed by the need to understand a situation in its entirety. For good things, we become obsessed with chasing that high and finding a way to feel it again. For bad things, we become equally committed to preventing any and all reoccurrence of that pain. Again, our past defines our present and therefore governs our future instead of informing it. We paint ourselves into arbitrary and completely unnecessary corners, but we take incomplete assessments of our past, use them to draw incorrect conclusions about our present, and then use those to make inappropriate predictions about our future. So in this next month, I'll challenge myself and all of you to reframe our reactions to the experiences of our lives. The entire world is at our feet, and we all have the freedom to explore every aspect of this beautiful life that God has given us, but only if we choose to do that. So instead of saying, X happened to me, now what does that say about me? Try saying this. X happened to me. Now what can I do with that? So here's my first example. God has graced me with beautiful sunrises this month. Now I can share them with all of you. Enjoy.